Welcome everybody back to Titans Up Today, episode 42. We have Dhrubojyoti Das Deb. Short is Drew or Dhruv. Is Dhruv correct? Because I know you sent me that over email. I would Dhruv, Dhrubojyoti.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And you're one of the few people who pronounce my name properly. So I'm pretty impressed. And thanks for inviting me over. It's exciting to share my principles and my ideas with everyone here.
100%. And I'm extremely excited for this. I've been thinking about it all week and been very eager. And one thing that I definitely appreciate about you is just as we're communicating over email, your drive. It's probably the JPMorgan Chase drive. Making sure that things get done, making sure that, hey, we're getting out there. Where are we at with the promotion? I absolutely love that. So that's probably some principle we'll talk about in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm the kind of person who is more proactive than reactive. So I try to get things done and make sure like who is working with me also get things done. So it's like putting everything, in piece. It's like a piece of puzzle. So we complete the game in time. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Environments of excellence. And that's definitely something I want to talk about. But to give people a background, you're the senior VP of software engineering and technology with JPMorgan Chase. You've been in the banking industry for decades now across different roles and different avenues of the value chain and things of that nature. So in this podcast, we really want to get into the three core topics: technology, risk, and innovation. But to give us a bit of a background on your intro to finance and, your origin as a technologist, because you truly have a broad understanding of technology, and we're going to get into some of that, but enlighten us to begin.
Sure. First of all, thanks again for inviting me over. And I'm pretty thrilled and excited to be present here. So as you already said, I have 20 plus years of experience and I have seen banking and financial industry grow. I joined the industry very first from the beginning and I joined as a program analyst. So I was like a developer. I climbed up the ladder. So I have seen technology grow. I have seen banking grow and I have seen, both grow hand in hand. So I know like how banking grew coupled to technology. So one cannot live without the other. Now, speaking something about myself, I joined in 2016. Like I started my career, and I was working for Cognizant, and then I worked for a couple of years for First Data, which is now Pfizer, and then I joined Chase somewhere like 6 years back in 2019, and I have been with Chase ever since because I like the culture. It's a brand name, and I like what I do. So I have been with, the advancement of banking from the very beginning for the last couple of decades. And the last 2 decades are which saw an exponential growth in banking as compared to the prior decades when you compare it with from 1960s and 70s to the 80s. So 2000, 2010, and 2020, and going forward, these are the new technology that we have in hand, which will drive the future of banking going forward.
Let's talk a little bit about that digitalization process that you were a part of in banking, because if we look at where banking is at today, it is truly astounding. The fact that the amount of money that JPMorgan Chase moves and just the general banking infrastructure and how well these systems truly function. So take us to the beginning of when we were just onboarding a lot of our paper documents into this digital world and the other elements that have cascaded along with that.
Right, right. So banking, everything started like a conventional banking. We have the classical banking methodology that started somewhere around 60s and 70s. So banks were like a physical place to store money, to get money out of the banks, and then write checks and do transfers and stuff like that. But it was all limited to the physical branches, right? And everything was on pen on paper. The computer did not advance. And this is the time when the mainframe computers came in the 1970s. Now, if you go decade by decade, if you see 1980, it will be the online banking coming in. Then we have the regulators and the networks like Visa and MasterCard coming in. So they basically lay the foundation for all the rules and stuff for moving money across the borders. So it basically opened the geography for banking. Now, 1990, if you see the internet expansion, that was a major part in the digitalization of banking. So this basically sets the stage where you have the online banking coming in, then you have the globalization, which is a result of the online banking. And then going to 2000, that's really when everything boomed. So the digitalization came in, which is the actual, you have the banking at everyone's fingertips. You have the smartphones coming in. You have the banking apps going into the smartphones. So you don't need to leave your place, right? I mean, you don't need to go out of your home. You don't need to go out of your office. So you can stay at your home, you can deposit a check, which will take a couple of hours for verification, and you will get the money the next day. You can do everything. So wallets came in, payment gateways came in, service providers came in, all in 2000. And after that, we know like it was an explosion of AI, cloud, ML. And then we have quantum computing, open banking, DeFi, Bitcoin, stablecoin. I mean, the list is endless, and it ends. I mean, I don't know where it will end. So it's just a speculation of how we harness the new technology as we go ahead in the game, and that will take us into the future.
What are some of the epochs and how do they differ from one another? And what were some of the similarities as they all unfolded?
That's a great question. So I would say like, the similarities that is there is a will to move forward, and we have to think about like what we are moving. So we are moving people's money. That's one of the prime importance. The second thing is, so that comes with a sense of security. So you will have to like, as technology advance, there will be pros and cons. So there will be cyber criminals who will be trying to, hack these things and get your way out, but you will have to protect it. And since banking deals with not only the money, but they also deal with customer data. So we have a lot of regulations and stuff coming in. You have the PCI DSS, you have the PCI SSC, you have the DGPS of DGPR, and everything will come in, right? So it's kind of a balance between technology and the business that you have to take. And this might be one of the reason why you will see banking is a little bit behind in technology in adopting it. Might be a couple of years, but once you get on it, it's riding the rails. Now that is a good part, because you have to out. You have to weigh the pros and the cons. You have to weigh like, what am I going to get, at the same time protecting the customer security and the data and the money. So, these are like some of the, challenges that we face. And yeah, at the same time, it comes with the business. So what the customer is expecting, so that's ever growing. The customer demands is something, if you do not meet, they will go on to another bank, right? So you will have to be in the game. So if you have to be in the game, you will have to be innovative.
And if we look at, to use one example recently that I know, having been immersed in the Web3 or blockchain field, after the years of 2020, in between 2020 and 2022, a lot of people thought that banking would be much more aggressive in their adoption of blockchain. And we are, of course, seeing, different take up that is now occurring. But it was a little bit surprising because everyone thought that this was the greatest technology for finance and that banks would be all over it. But I think the adoption was a little bit slower. And kind of what you brought up is there's a risk and reward.
Yeah.
And, as we're looking now, some of the technologies have matured and solidified their place and what they can do for a large organization. So just talk a little bit about that versus perhaps some other technologies which may have been adopted more aggressively and why you think some of those elements are.
Yeah. So since you were a blockchain, that's interesting. Like that really came on to the market somewhere around 2016, 2017. And JPM was one of the first company like Chase to have their, adopted this technology. We kind of started working beginning of the game. And then I know we launched our coin, like that is JPM coin, which is kind of a, internal coin that we use for inter-institution delivery. And we do a lot of money movement with it. So that was like somewhere in around 2019 and 2020. So till the time we adopted the technology, the research part came in, and it was not like, there are different types of blockchain. If you think about the cryptocurrencies, there are different cryptocurrencies. Like, there are public blockchain, there are private blockchain, there are consortium blockchain. So it's a matter of choosing what you need to do, like what you want. So you cannot choose the public ones because it's open to public. You cannot manipulate that. You cannot have that in hand. It's like, owning a stock. And then you cannot get the private ones because that's tightly coupled. So you have to, have a hybrid philosophy and hybrid methodology where you need to harness that. You need to see whether it fits the company, whether it serves your motto, and if it serves the customer at the same time, keeping in view of the regulatory demands. Now,
Mhm.
the one reason why it was a little bit late, because there are not many regulatory practices around blockchain. So it might be, a little bit faster. It cuts down the intermediaries. It cuts down on the fee. The settlement is pretty quick. It's secure. It's digital. Everything. But there are not a lot of governance. There's not a lot of regulatory bodies like we have, like the PCI DSS, the PCI SSC, the DGPR. They don't govern the blockchain fundamentals. So that's building up. And when we go along, like as these matures, I mean, banks will really rely on them. Like banks will not create the governance bodies, right? So when we adhere any new technology, they will look forward to the regulatory. So if the regulatories are keeping up with the new technology, then that's a win-win situation, right? It's a win-win for the bank as well. So that's where we kind of lack. And at the same time, we had to assess like whether, it's going to bring in good thing to us, or if it's going to be a disaster, because we cannot risk it when we go live.
Now, there's a lot of paths to go down there, but one that I shared an article with you, it was from JPMC, Asset Management Division. I believe it was, I won't use the title because I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a research paper from someone in JPMC on DeepSeek. And, DeepSeek is this blast through innovation that just came over the last, few weeks or so in terms of it's really hitting the main stage, kind of that ChatGPT moment. And this was such a good research paper. It was really well done, and the clarity in the thinking was something you would expect from, a frontier researcher, not a leader at a bank. Because
Right.
where, like you're saying, there's this balance of risk and innovation, technology and regulation that affects the way technologies are adopted in finance. And I was just absolutely blown away that he was taking data, and it was actually, I think there was multiple contributors on the paper, ultimately 4 or 5 pages of just the most precise way of thinking about why this is important and how it could be used and some of the risks and the challenges. And it's really, I think it reflects that innovation, or, that drive to be a leader in JPMC. So tell us a little bit more about how such a large organization, can be so effective at creating this space and freedom and opportunity for people to innovate and think creatively and think clearly.
Yeah. So I would attribute to the fact that it's based on the leadership. Now, we have a lot of banks in the US, right? And I like Jamie and his decisions and his whole slew of leaderships that are there. We are one of the few banks that hit the technology right when it comes. We try to get on with the technologist. If we are not able to get the right people, we try to get on with the company. So strike a partnership with somebody who is already working on it, because we try to see if we can harness that technology, which can help us in any way, like whether it be transaction processing, whether it be security, whether it be AI, whether it be ML, cloud, resiliency, everything. It's a methodical planning that goes on. So it starts right from assessing funds. So you have to start from the very beginning, right? So you have to assess funds, and you have to balance out the funds like, hey, this is going to go to the research. And then you'll have to work it through. So recently we had a change in CTO, and he joined us from, I think, PayPal. He was there for a long period of time. So it's the fundamentals and the decisions that will be there. So we take the technology, and then we try to hire the right folks. If not, then we go to the technologist, partner with them, we set the funds up, and then we try to see like what we can do with that once we have a little faith in the technology. And then we try to do a POC or something like that by seeing what businesses can benefit out of the technology. And once we are sure, like, so first of all, we try to do internal implementation on our side. I mean, for example, AI and ChatGPT, right? Gen AI. Now, we did not harness ChatGPT, and we did not open it up directly to internal of Chase. But what we did is we took it up, and then we built a wrapper on top of it, and we did the LLM suite. So LLM suite is internal to all our employees. It's not yet external. And it can do a lot of stuff like summarizing emails and stuff like that. So that's one example of how we harness technology, how we invest time in it. What is our plan? What is our roadmap? We have definitely a roadmap to going forward and roll it out externally, but it comes a pace which is determined by us based on variety of reasons.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the parts there that I wrote over here, and that's that early initial testing, that when it comes to maintaining the level of innovation that you're, accustomed to, and wanting to be a leader in all these things, it's that early testing process and the appetite, which,
Right.
like you said, to use the word from earlier, the principles that cascade down from leadership. So what are some of the specific principles that are really that allow that opportunity for potentially failure, right? I mean, I think, and I'm just throwing that out there, usually in organizations that are very successful or innovative, there's an appetite for failure that says, hey, we can use the fund to discover this or this or this kind of outcome. How is that process engineered, and what are some of the principles that you have learned personally through this process, or that your team embodies, that create this fast moving and innovative architecture and infrastructure of people that you have working together?
Right. So in my opinion, like what I have seen working in a company is you have to let your employees work and innovate themselves. So if you are not, doing free movement and free movement of ideas within your team, you are not innovating the team. If you're not innovating the team, you're not giving people enough scope to learn. And if you're not doing that, then That's a problem at the fundamental level, right? So it's like, striking a classic chord, which will help you retain the employees, at the same time encourage them to go ahead and learn new technology, try to come up with new ideas. Like we have hackathons, which we do all over the world. And we recently did one in Atlanta. We have hackathons in other parts of the US. We do it for a bunch of days, like 3 or 4 days. We get on, we get a Zoom call, we branch it out, and then we discuss new ideas, and there is a winner. So, so that way, like it's basically the culture that you do, and it has to be ingrained from bottom up, at the same time from top to the bottom. So the philosophy is from the top, which will come down, and then it will be on the grassroots level. If you're encouraging that, it will help everyone grow.
And does this, the people that you work with, people are excited to come into work because they get the opportunity to
Absolutely.
test different things.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, but one of the good things why I'm with Chase and I love working for Chase is, first of all, they encourage you to, speak. You can bring in any technology. It's just that you will have, I mean, they have a set of principles, right? Every banks do. And you will have to abide by that. I mean, you cannot break one of those. And it's not good to break, right? Something, workplace principles and everything. But as long as the new technology is abiding by that and it's not bringing any problem to the company, you're free to use it.
Mm.
So, we are one of the few banks who are leading high on technology. Like you name a technology, we already have harnessed it, or we are still in the research phase, including quantum computing. And I've seen that happening very less with many of the other banks. I've not seen that happening too much. So that's one of the, main reasons why I love working for Chase, and I encourage to break the myth that people still think that bank is all legacy. So it was legacy couple of decades back, couple of years back, but I don't think it's that case right now. We are moving to modernization. There's a huge drive within every bank and every company. So you will see all the banks more or less have harnessed cloud, right? So it's there, it's stabilized, it's scalable, and they are working on AI. They're working with quantum banking. I know Goldman Sachs is working, Wells Fargo is working with quantum banking and quantum algorithm. So it's growing up and it's creeping on the bank. So the myth that banking is legacy, I think we need to let that go.
For sure. Now, this reminds me of a quote or an experience that when I was just getting into the world of finance, I was making a presentation with a partner of mine, and I used the words eliminating risk. And he said, well, he was much more advanced in the finance industry than me. And he said, it's not about eliminating risk, because risk is actually a good thing. It's
Okay.
managing the risk and
Exactly.
managing it appropriately. So what you're saying is that with the appropriate processes and things that containerizing that instance of development or the utilization of the technology and all the other security protocols, whatever's else necessary, you're allowing risk to be properly managed so that you can maximally incentivize the action occurring, and the result on the outside, on the output is, improvement and leadership status across different levels of technology and innovation.
Absolutely. That's the way forward.
Mhm.
And unless you're doing that, I don't think you will be able to progress properly. If you don't harness technology, you will not be able to grow. Like take, for example, Nokia, right? I mean, that Nokia was one of the leading phone provider. They were not smartphone, but then the Android came in, the Android wave came in. They did not want to move from their OS, right? And then everyone moved on to smartphones, and then Samsung picked up, Huawei picked up, and Nokia went down the line. So nobody bought Nokia phones, and they were still stuck with their old technology. So it's like you have to harness it. You will have to have an open mind, and it should come, straight from the top, the top leadership. So I mean, and many of the things rest on the leadership. And if you have a good leader, then they set the stage for the others to follow.
And the term that comes to mind there is unseat yourself within JPMorgan, because
Absolutely.
you're number one, but you should be continuously trying to unseat yourself.
Yeah, and that's a lot really to keep up the pace, like maintain. And maintenance is the most difficult thing. But it's again the principles that you will have to be implementing at the grassroots level, which will help you up the top
Mhm.
and be at the top.
And a strong culture of proving value, right? If you can find value, prove it out. So I want to expand a little bit. Of course, we're going to talk a ton about banking, but I want to give people some breadth about yourself. You've written a few books
Yeah.
about health and happiness, and I think it was really interesting because one of the titles, I wrote an ebook many, many years ago, I think maybe 10 years ago, and it was called Health, Happiness, and Simplicity. And your title for one of your books was pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it's not me only, but it's basically a collaborative effort with two other authors. I'm one of the co-authors and the editor. So I have written like 3 Heaven Live Blessed, Heaven Beacons, and 10 Ways to a Good Health.
Mm.
So it's just one of the things that I'm interested in, like sharing ideas and principles with how to make your life healthy, because it's not work that we only do. The most important thing is like spending time with your loved ones, with your family, and how you love yourself. So if you don't love yourself, then you will not be able to love and spend time with the others.
Mm,
So
mm. What have you found is the right equation for yourself? Everyone says, there's work-life balance and there's people, it should be equal, right? Balanced. You should 8 hours here, 8 hours there, whatever. There's others that say, work-life balance is a myth. But it seems that, and I really want to highlight that from these books that you've written and you mentioned you have collaborators and whatnot. When you put your mind in the direction of something, you want to improve your health, your happiness, and you're really thoughtfully thinking about it. I've yet to find something that you can't figure out, right? Or you can't improve on. So what have you found is an equation that works for you in this high, the high intensity field of banking and innovation and software that you're working in combination with, having the right roots and foundation, which make you a better member of your team?
the one thing that I think is you will have to be open to yourself and honest to yourself, because work will always be there, and that not every time the work will be high. So there will be lows and highs, right? And then in the highs, you deliver. That's what you do. But when you're in the lows, like when work is less, then you concentrate on yourself. You need to invest a minimum amount of time on your side. And I'm not saying like you'll work like 23 hours a day. That's not possible. That's not humanly possible, right? So you need to figure out how much you can deliver and not push yourself to burnout. That's why you have teams, right? If you don't have a proper process in your team, you will not be able to balance things out. So in banking, the bank never sleeps. Money movement never sleeps. When people are sleeping, we always operate, right? So how do we manage that? You cannot be awake 24/7 looking at a system and analyzing it. So we break it down into different shifts. That's what you do. And you build teams at strategic places, you build teams at strategic timeline, and you divide the whole day into hours of 8 each, right? So if you have 3 teams, one in India, one in US, and somewhere in the middle, like let's say Singapore, then you can have 3 teams working in parallel with certain amount of overlap, and that will give you the right work balance. Now, I'm not saying it will be 8 hours a day every day, but it might be like 10, it might be 6. But that way you will get the right balance to focus on your health, to focus on your mental happiness, to focus on your me time. And once you focus on your me time, then automatically your family will be your first priority, right? So you will be able to give time to them. They will be happy, you will be happy, your wife will be happy, and everyone will be happy.
Have you found that having a high drive in your career and achieving success in your career actually helps you to do some of the other things better? Because I think that's something that's often missed is that, is that people think that if you're too weighted towards business and success and productivity, that somehow that just means that you're not going to be as effective in the rest of your life. But in my experience, it's not always true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always true, but unless you're a workaholic, you want to work like 80 hours a week, it's your choice. So I think it's people's choice what they want to do. If they want to strike a chord, they can do it. It's not that they cannot do it. You will have to delegate stuff to your intermediaries, right? You will have to delegate stuff. You will have to put faith in other people and let them do their job. And you will have to train them. You'll have to get a process in place. So that's what I was saying, right? So unless you have that,
Mm.
you will not get peace of mind, and work will never stop. Work will go on. So in my opinion, it's very important to identify the right people, identify the right process, do methodically. It will be bumpy a little bit at the beginning, but once you know what needs to be done, so you need to choose the right people to show you direction. Not everything you can do yourself. I mean, I don't know every single technology. So if I want to harness something that I don't know, I'll get the right minds. I'll tell them like, hey, this is what I want to do. You tell me what needs to be done. We'll discuss, we'll come up with some brainstorming session, we'll come up with a plan, and then we'll try to implement it, then put the process in place. And going forward, it will be a smooth.
So it comes down to connect the dots. And I do want to zoom us back out and look back towards the beginning of your career. At the heart of it, there is finding the right process, working with the people around you to engineer the result that meets the demand, meets the goal, exceeds in many cases, and then still allows you to have the right foundations to make you a productive and happy person, which
Absolutely.
need that full.
Absolutely.
Let's go back what you elucidated on there, where your establishment of the way that you operate today and the greater JP Morgan, if you have multiple shifts and the right balance and things of that nature. But go back, let's jump back all the way to the beginning of your career. How has the culture of banking transformed along with those epochs of technological innovation? And how has your own viewpoint matured along the way as well. And I'm sure that the people on the beginning of finance to the later stages of their careers will all be able to get some insight and information from this.
So when I started my career in 2000, it was already in the digitalization phase. So the smartphones were 2000, not 16, but 2006. It was already there. The smartphones were on the verge and technology was already booming. The internet was up and everything was globalized. So looking forward to that, like I had been in the payment and processing space for the whole time. And if I take example of that, we had started with the magnetic stripe card. And then after that, it came down to EMV, which is the chip card. And then after chip card, what came was the contactless technology, the NFC, RFID. And then now you have biometric payments. You don't need to pull out your wallet to pay. You can just smile. So JPM's recently launched their product at NRF a couple of days back. And it was for biometric payments, like where you can smile and you can pay. So that's it. For the last 20 years, this is how it grew. And also banking, if you think about it, we have opened up borders. Cross-border payment is open. Trading is open right now. Real-time payments have come in. Institutions can send money. You can send money from here to anywhere at the click of a button. In mobiles, you don't have to even open your laptop. So money movement is easier. We make it look easier. So it's basically you are simplifying the day-to-day lives of everyone, like individuals and businesses. At the end of the day, we are serving the customers, and if the customers are happy, we are happy. So right from when people, are born, their lives are intertwined with banking. So every step of the way, like whether you are getting a loan, buying a home, going for a fund for your children college, retirement, banking is there at every step of the way. They're doing their job and making life simple for everyone.
Mm. And the degree of purpose and importance that comes from that working in
Yeah.
the industry.
Yeah. And
The person is effective.
right. I mean, one of the good things that I see is contributing to the society by making it better in terms of payment. So if everything is okay with your finances and there are no complaints, then you can concentrate on other things. But if something is wrong, like when you go to a store, you want to buy some stuff for your wife or your children, you're not able to pay, or you're not able to move money, you're not able to get a loan, you're not able to buy a home or buy a car or anything like that, then that's a problem. So you get stuck and everything goes haywire. So if one thing is good, the other things will be good. So that's our focus. Like at least my focus is to make life easier for everyone. And that's how I get the thrill of still working in the banking industry.
Is that how you would do it, define your purpose as well? Or is there a different way you define your purpose? Right? Being an author and thinking about, fulfillment and all those things like you are, how do you define your purpose? And is that similar as the purpose of JP Morgan and organizations? Because I know that great organizations have great purposes that usually move people. So tell us some more about that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, in my opinion, Chase is devoted to its customers. They look after the customers, they look after the employees, and they do it really well. That is why, if you see, it's the number one bank. We do our job. At the same time, we serve the customers well. Customers are happy. And at the same time, the employees are happy. So I myself try to make people happy in terms of my job, like, get the customers happy and be in line. And that is one of the motto that Chase has adhered to. So bring in new technology, make things easier, and at the same time, you grow your business. But at the same time, like everyone is here to do business, right? You have other banks, if they're in the competition, JPMC is in the competition. But at the same time, if you're giving value to customers and your employees, that's what matters at the end of the day. That's the whole thing that matters, bringing people into the value, bring the human thing into everything in the world of business.
Mm. And how is your approach towards innovation adjusted over the years? Back when
Yeah,
you
I
were
mean,
getting started, what are some of the things that you learned that help you become successful and an innovator in your space?
sure. So innovation is not, I mean, I personally believe that innovation is not something about learning huge technology. It's not like learning AI. It's not like learning Gen AI. It's not like learning ML, quantum computing, that kind of stuff. And anyone can be innovative, right? If you are, let's say, take the example of cooking. I love cooking. Now, when I cook, I try to do things differently. That's the kind of innovation. Like it comes from your mind. So when you're working, if you try to do things differently, which comes from your mind, that's basically innovation. When I work, I try to see what is the best way forward. Can there be any other way forward? And take a look back, write it down, see the three ways, and then do it the best way. So that way, you are not limiting your mind to one specific way that has been coming all the way along, because that is bias, right? If you know that you need to solve a math trick in a specific way, then you are memorizing it. So I don't like that. I give the trick to somebody. I let them think. Like, I don't give the solution. I don't tell them what needs to be done. I don't tell them what I'm thinking. Come up with your own solution. Let's brainstorm it. And someone might come with a solution better than me, right? So you need to keep an open mind, in my opinion. You need to understand the problem really well. And at the same time, it should come from yourself. Now, going to the new technology, like over the years, I have, picked up technologies which I didn't knew, and I tried to do something new with it. So those were not really new technologies. Like right now, I'm working in different other technologies like cloud and AI, ML, blockchain, and quantum computing. Not working totally, but I know and involved in a lot of stuff. But it's not that I'm innovating everything. And it's not that you can only innovate in this new technology. You can also innovate in older technology. So anyone can be an innovator. It's just that it has to come from themselves, and they can innovate in what they're doing in a different fashion. So that is really what innovation means.
That's fantastic and broadly applicable to many people. And as you're looking back at the innovations that you've seen come to market, what have been the most impactful for the life of the customer? And then to look forward of the various technologies you're working on, where do you think the biggest change is going to come in the customer's life over the next, let's say, 10 years?
So this question has really two parts that I see it. One is what came and what will come.
Mhm.
So what came, if I take the example of banking, I believe the digitalization of banking was the most revolutionizing of all the things. So with the advent of computer, the scope really went infinite. So banking went into internet, and then when you had the mobile applications built on the smartphones like Android or iOS, then you had everything done from the palm of your hand. So that was one of the most revolutionizing thing that had happened, because everything is surrounding that. So all the technology like AI, you're getting a chat GPT app on your mobile phone, right? So that is basically digitalization. Now banking, everything you can do via the app. So that's one of the best thing that I've ever seen. Now going forward, like if I fast forward a couple of years down the line, what I think can be revolutionizing is personal assistants like virtual banks, the new banks. Even it's already there. We have virtual banks for JPMC itself. So JPMC offers customers, businesses, and institutions to log into the Access Online portal where we have the virtual branches. So you don't need to go to a physical branch outlet. The virtual bank is there. Everything is virtual. You can still get all the help. So you can log there and do it yourself. So I think going forward, the whole theory of banking, physical thing, it will go off. Everything will be virtualized. The neobanks will come into picture. There are a couple of neobanks right now, like the Varo Bank and Aspirants and Current and all those things. But they will expand, and customers can do literally everything. They will have their own hyper personalized assistant with the help of AI, with the help of AI ML, or even quantum computing. I mean, they can use their trade bots, right? So we can have trade bots which can be done with the help of quantum computing, and that can analyze the stock portfolio, and they can do their portfolio management and stuff like that. So I think going forward down the line, it will be a total boom of the technology that we are seeing, the advent. Like AI, Gen AI is still in the early stages in terms of implementation. It came right after, the chat GPT, which is kind of giving a super competition to it. And then after that, Alibaba released its version of DeepSeek, which is Quen 2.5, which is kind of giving competition to chat GPT. So all those things are coming in. So it's an ever-changing landscape. And the good thing is, who's gonna who's going to get benefit? The customers are going to get benefit out of all this technology. But it depends on how the banks are going to harness it.
And what emerges in my mind, and something you mentioned earlier, is you have the question was around, and you answered it very well there, is around the customer's life. And I consider that, right, what's above, and that's the people, the things that we see. And really the main insight there is that the interfaces, the way we interact with the fundamental service is what is going to expand and improve in our lives. And I'm curious to ask that question on the inside, the internals of technology. You talked about quantum, you talked about some, new cybersecurity approaches and things like that. What are some of the technologies or the major innovations that we aren't going to see necessarily as everyday consumers that you think will have the biggest impact on banking and the industry?
Okay. So I mean, as customers, we don't really, I mean, if you're a customer, you don't know like what's going on behind the scenes, right? You will see a trade bot, you will see a personal assistant, and they will be answering all your questions. So that's AI, that's ML, and that's NLP, deep learning, and everything running behind the scenes. So that technology, the customers will not be able to see. Second thing is like, say, quantum computing is relatively new, which is a branch of quantum physics, and that deals on the subatomic level, right? So normal computers calculate 1 and 0. So 1 is like bit set, 0 is bit off. But quantum computing has a lot of states, and based on it, it can do calculations much faster. If you have heard the news from Google, like DeepMind, they said they solved a problem in 5 minutes, like a math problem in 5 minutes, which normal computers will take 1 septillion years. So that's like 1 and 27 zeros after it. So that's remarkable. So those kind of technological advancements happening. And as customers, we will never know like where it is. So if you are able to merge technologies, these are like separate technologies, like AI, ML, and then quantum computing and all the stuff. So everything at the end will come under the same umbrella, and everyone will hold hands together to give you a final product. So that will happen. And that's what is the job of us technologists behind the scene. So that's what we do. But the end benefiter is the customer.
And then another divergence that occurs in my mind of this mental model that we're building out here is, there's the top, which is the customer's life. There's the inside, which is the technology. To go back, we talked about blockchain. You mentioned from the crypto standpoint, or let's just say digital currencies. But then on the inside, there's the DLT, the distributed ledger technology, as a fundamental component of database,
Right. Right.
architecture in and of itself. That's another thing. How do you think that's going to come into effect? Because you mentioned, I think there was, it's starting to have more solidified understanding of ways that we can use it, because when you can compute faster, obviously there's your data architecture that you're interacting with and everything of that nature. So how do you think that blockchain is going to, and DLT is going to see a resurgence at some point?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Now, if you think about, how the blockchain works in simplified terms, it basically gives you the hint of how it works. Blockchain is nothing but a ledger of information which are kept in blocks, and these are held by chains. So if I'm doing a transaction, that transaction is kept in a block that's validated by a bunch of nodes sitting somewhere, and that's digitally signed. So there is no question of fraud. It's open, it's transparent, and each block has its own size limit. So that, let's say, it can hold 100 transactions. And after the 100 transaction, it will open up a new block. That is done, it's chained together, and that is basically blockchain. So it's basically DLT, as you said. Now, how that's going to help us, it's already helping us. I mean, if you see JPM, if you see the stats, I think they're doing more than $1 billion movement every day. And JPMC Onyx platform that was built for cryptocurrency, that's also there in the market, which uses blockchain technology. So it's already there in the market, not with every bank, but because there are limitations on how you use it, you have to have the funds, you have to have a lot of things, you have to have, it's heavy. So you're looking at the bright side, but there is a dark side to it. Now, what are the dark side? First of all, not enough regulatory bodies for blockchain. So there are no specific set of rules or something, not a centralized one. The second thing is you have to have a whole operating model, operational cost, maintenance cost. You have to invest a lot in order to get going, because data mining is costly. It needs a lot of computational power. Third point, it's not eco-friendly. So it's going to heat up. You need cooling stuff and everything. So all those things kind of add up. So it's basically a balance between the highs and the lows. But at the end of the day, if you strike the real chord, I think that will be the way to go forward.
Very well said. And what about different cybersecurity approaches? You mentioned the word proactive, that you take that approach towards your life, that proactivity is important. What are some emerging things in that field, and the way you look at the way that those will evolve the industry?
Yeah. So, before we go into cybersecurity, we have to understand what are cyber crimes. Cyber crimes are done by cyber criminals, which are just like normal everyday criminals, just that they're doing it over the net, right? So we have the phishing attacks, we have the ransomware, we have the insider threats, we have the DDoS attacks. So these are the different kind of cyber attacks that happen every day with the new technology coming in. If you think about AI is looking at the good side. Now, if cyber attackers harness AI and use it to attack us, can that happen? Definitely that can happen. Can you use quantum computing to break algorithms and stuff like RSA and everything. It can. But looking at the bright side, we'll have to take care of that. So how do we do it? We do it in a framework manner. There are a couple of vulnerability management frameworks that we follow. One is you need to identify the assets that you can do by SBOM and AI. So that's software bill of materials and AI bill of materials. It will give you transparency, a ledger-like approach where you can do compliance, regulatory stuff, everything. You need to do regular risk management. You need to do patch management so that you know your softwares are not outdated. You need to do proper testing. You need to engage your customers. You need to let them know about the cybersecurity and everything. So these are some of the proactive stuff that a team should do. And obviously, there are the security things, right? A bunch of things that you can do, starting with MFA, multi-factor authentication, that's already in place. When you're doing coding, you can do TLS, which is transport layer security, and SSL, then tokenization encryption. You cannot, I mean, you should not keep any cards in the open. So even if it's flowing through a channel, you should encrypt it. Then you can segment the networks so that you keep a protected firewall on top of every network so that you have double, triple layer of security. You can do IP netting, you can do whitelisting, you can do IP blacklisting. So these are all the things that you can do. And obviously you can also use AI, ML, and quantum computing to do risk assessment, fraud, and risk management.
Right.
So that's like a complete package. It only depends on how you want to do it, where you want to apply it, and how it can fit in best within your application. Because some of the applications can be internet facing, some of them are not internet facing. So you need to weigh it out.
So in each one, right, there's a dynamic set of solutions that
Yep.
are applied to whatever that need is. And, what comes up from that in my mind is when you're looking at the evolving threat, the polymorphic threats, as they're called, with artificial
Right.
intelligence that are now possible. There was a transaction that I'm sure you heard this $25 million deepfake transaction. I believe it was in some Asian country where the CFO was tricked into sending $25 million to some account because a multi-layer scheme where they called his phone, they deepfaked the CEO, they got in the email. I mean, they were in multiple levels. So
Right.
try to break down, because that's an extremely advanced attack. Try to break
Right.
down some of the ways that could have been prevented or solved, because I think that's a poster child case for the potential of what cybercrime could be. Obviously, we want to stop those things and protect the people and this wonderful architecture and infrastructure that we've created, like you've mentioned, right? There's the highs and the lows, there's the good and the dark. We got to protect the everyday person who's trying to go out and buy groceries from these kinds of things. But talk a little bit about your thoughts on that case if you've heard about it.
Yeah, I mean, I did read about it, and it was really an interesting case because that company was not ready, and he was not ready personally to get that into like an attack like that. Now, the only way that you can prep yourself is to, I would say, like think into the future of harnessing technology. So you can only cut a diamond with a diamond, right? So if you want to stop those kind of attacks, you will have to get into the game. You will have to harness those technologies, and you will have to put funds to those technologies. You open up a research wing, or you partner with somebody who has already worked in that domain and get them on your team. So that's what matters in the most, in my opinion. The second thing is not many people have heard about how cryptocurrency works, what a blockchain is. So the second thing is you have to encourage your employees to learn new technology, and so that they know what should be applied when you are building applications like that, right? And the third thing obviously is get a process-oriented manner like this bomb, AI bomb, get your inventory list updated and get the patches. And at the same time, do all kind of testing. You need to do like Netflix does kiosk testing. So if they have like 100 microservices, they stop some of the microservices, even in the security side. And then they see if there are the secondary and the tertiary firewalls and then the levels, if they can pick up. So like it will not come in a single day, and there is no like after doing all those things, can you really say you will be able to stop all of the attacks? I will not say like that. You cannot really ever say, but definitely you will be in a better sleeping position at night than what you're doing right now, right? So you know that you're doing the right thing, and 90% of the attacks will be stopped. Only the 10% will be coming, but at least you're doing 90% of your thing, right? So that's what we need to start doing, in my opinion.
Right. And I'm going to use the term here, on ramp, because what you've shared, the on ramp to the right solution, whether it be an innovation or protection or security or really just building great teams, is find the right person who has the requisite skill set or the right company or the right partner or the right source of information that you can begin to start moving towards solving that problem, encouraging people to learn and having that process oriented manner.
Absolutely. Well said.
I love it's always good to have an honor because a lot of
Yeah.
people get lost in, oh, this is an intractable problem, or this sounds incredibly difficult, or this is too advanced. But a lot of times, and maybe you can resonate with this sentiment over time, if we look at the last 20 years since you've been in banking, there's always been kind of that next step. And if you ever get caught in the, I don't know if this is going to change, it definitely is going to change. And we just want to find the right people or the sources of information and I guess just stay solution oriented and outcome oriented, maintaining your commitment to the purpose and the dedication of the people that you're serving, the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, do what you do, like, focus on what you're doing, but at the same time, you'll have to see where the world is going, what the competitors are doing, and what the technology companies are building. So, this is again like proactive versus reactive. Like, you don't want to build your cybersecurity system once you're attacked, right? You don't want to do that because that will be a damage to your reputation and everything. Like, if you see what happened today in UK, Barclay was down for almost 24 hours and they were sending apology notices. I was hearing the news, but something broke really bad on their side. Customers were not able to move money. They were not able to shop. They did not see any funds in their system. So this is not a cyber attack, but this is something like something going wrong in the system. This is just like a cyber attack, right? So I think you need to be prepared for all these things. So you have to have a plan of action in your mind. What happens if there's a cyber attack happening? So you need to prep your company, you need to prep your team, and all the applications that are running inside the company that's building the blocks up. Everyone individually should have a plan, and the firm as a whole should have a plan. That will come into place when there's an actual thing that's coming. So that's entirely my view. And whatever I say in this, these are like my views and definitely not of JPMCs. But this is what I feel of my personal experience of 20 years.
For sure. Now, to talk about the process oriented manner, you talked about IBOM and
Yeah.
SBOM. There we
Yeah.
go. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear you talk about those terms because when we really get down into the SDLC and to mention DeepSeek, which we talked about at the beginning, how would you go about using AI bombs or S bombs? Because a lot of people might not know what they are. I know they're more of a mandated, of course, by Joe Biden due to, I think it was in the critical infrastructure industries. But,
Right.
a lot of people still probably don't understand the power and the potency of those. So tell us a little bit more about that and how, you go about managing the SDLC from origin to production.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think everyone in the technology sector at least should know. If they do not know, then they should learn it so that they can keep their system well. So SBOM is software bill of materials. That's a generic term, which means it's basically a inventory of all the components, the libraries, the dependencies, the tools that is used to build a software application, including the versions, including the origins. So think about it like as an Excel where you have all the items lined up. So if you're using 10 technology algorithms and stuff like that, you're listing their versions, you're listing where it came from, their predecessors and stuff like that. So it's kind of a big traceability matrix. Now, what it will provide you transparency. So you know what is there, what you are dealing with on an everyday, day-to-day basis. You know the compliance or the regulatory aspect of it. You know what needs to be done when there is a vulnerability so that you can look up the manuals or what is going on in the market. If there are any third parties providing solution, that you can apply a patch on top of it for each of those items. And also when you can also prevent like supply chain issues that happen with solar winds, right? You can also do that. So it's basically a ledger of all the things. Now, it seems simple, but if you maintain it over a period of time, let's say 20 years, now anything before 20 to 30 years is basically legacy. So if you have that flowing down the line and if you pass those information down the line, you will know how the software basically got built. Now, in same for the AI bomb, it's basically just like the S bomb, but it deals with the AI aspect of stuff. So it has all the algorithms, it has all the models, it has all the details of the frameworks and the dependencies for needing to develop and deploy a AI system. Now, why is it important? I think along with all the other details that I mentioned, two other things comes into picture for AI. One is the transparency and the explainability. So think about like a chat GPT. If you ask a question, you will see an answer. You ask a question again, it will give you a different answer. Probably 90% of the facts will be the same. You ask it again, it will give you another answer. So it's kind of built to give a certain amount of randomness to what is giving you back. Now, this is a good thing. Now, this is a bad thing in a way. It will not tell you how it arrived at the logic, how it arrived. So it's kind of a black box. You're asking it a question and it's giving you an answer back. Now, you're taking with it, feeling contented and happy. But sometimes it doesn't give you a proper answer back. If you ask it too many times, it will give you some kind of hallucination. That's what we call hallucinations in the AI world. Now, if you maintain an AI bomb, like list of stuff, then you will know like these are the data sets and these are the algorithms that are there. Now, you can tweak them if you can figure out, like if you can figure out the thread, you can go back to that algorithm or a set of algorithms to see like, hey, why is it coming? And then you can fine tune. It might have something to do with the data. That is where the bias and the ethical risk will come in. So when you are training the model, like in the case of a GPT or BERT or something like that, like any pre-trained model, you will have to carefully analyze the data set and pick the data set. Because if you are keeping and taking the data set from a specific region, then you're introducing biasness. If you are taking the data set of stats from a specific caste or a creed of people or a specific geography, then you are introducing biasness because that's what those peoples do, right? So it's basically keeping a list of what you did to build the system. And then when you have issues, you go back to that and try to figure out which one is wrong. And that way it will be easier for you because it's transparent and you will be able to figure it out easily.
The image that comes up in my mind is if you were lost in the of a forest, you'd be marking the trees along the way. But
Absolutely.
you're not
That's a nice analogy.
for sure.
Yeah.
And as you are looking forward into your career and as your development as a leader, what are some of the things that you've learned from delivering on big projects and leading people?
So personally, I think I have grown over the years as a person. When I joined as a intern, I was only focused doing my job well. Then, when I matured and I started leading people as a technologist, I understood it's not only about you that you need to deal with. You have to do your job, but at the same time, you will have to pull others up. When you are leading a team of 10, 15, 20, you will see that not all the people are going at your speed. There will be folks who are way ahead of you. You are not only the smart one, like right now. And then there will be other people who are less smarter than you. So you have to pull them together and encourage that dynamics within the team. If you encourage that flow of information and the flow of mindset, then you have a really dynamic team. Now, the other thing is when you are building a team, I believe you need to include a substantial amount of diversity in it, not only in terms of what people can do, but what people think and where they origin from. If you include that, you have people coming from different sectors and each people think differently. And that varies by region, that varies by experience. If you hire all the smart, they may not be too smart as a group, as compared to when you hire somebody who is smart and then a mix of other people and blend who work as a team. So that way the team gets smarter. So that's how I feel. So you'll have to keep yourself up to date. At the same time, you'll have to work as a team. You will have to pull others up. And then you will have to understand what you are going to deliver. So you will have to understand the scope. So if something comes from the business and the product, that is coming from the customers. So you have to, I mean, in banking, the most important thing is you have to understand what the customers are wanting. Because if you don't deliver what the customers are wanting because you didn't understand what the customers are wanting, then your application will be not a hit. It will be a failure, right? And the business will come back saying like, hey, this is not what I wanted. So you have to blend the gap between the different teams, between the product, between the business, between the technologist, and create a seamless flow from top to bottom. And that way, that is the only way that you can deliver a project end to end. So this is basically, I'm talking about the SDLC. So up the chain, if you think about a firm and coming from the client and then going all the way to the developers who are actually working and trying to deliver, because they only know what the business tells them. The business knows what the product tells them. The product knows what the customers tell them. But if there is a gap in between all these people, then information will not flow properly and will not be able to deliver. So it's a blend of everything. As a leader, I think you need to lead from the front. It's not like boss. It's not like you're telling your team what needs to be done and that needs to be done. It's like if they cannot do it, you go there, try to solve it out, and you get your hands dirty, try to see like what's going on if they're not able to do it, and see what's wrong. And then you delegate the work like to somebody who is able to do it. Like not every time you'll be able to do it, but if you harness the culture and try to push it, then the team will really be able to get the culture and then they will be able to do it themselves.
Harness the culture. That's a very positive or powerful term.
Exactly.
And how do you go about developing leaders in that? And then maybe helping people that, who need to be brought up to the standard for whatever reason. How do you go about handling each one of those cases?
So I think like you need to give people chance. If you're shutting them down, then they will not feel encouraged. They may have ideas, they may have stupid ideas, they may have bright ideas. Those ideas might not be applicable for that point of time, but you need to encourage people to give ideas. Now, if you don't encourage that, then they will stop talking. And I have seen that happening in many teams where the team lead was not comfortable with somebody sharing their ideas because it was not relevant. So then I stepped in and I said, this is not the right way to do it. I think we should let everyone speak their mind and then try to tell them what is relevant, why it's not relevant. That way, you can get information flowing freely and you can encourage people to think. So if a company looks after the employees, I mean, it's like an analogy. If the company looks after the employees, then the employees will work for them and they might overwork for them without asking anything. So it's basically a harmony that exists between the two groups and that will bring out the best in the people. Now you will have to identify who can do what. Not everyone in your team might be a good developer. Not everyone in your team might be a good QA. Not everybody can do documentation well. So you will have to encourage what people do best and what they do not do better and try to do them better. So if somebody is a good developer, ask him to work with the other person to share the knowledge on how he can do things differently, which can bring the other person up to speed to be a good developer. And the same goes vice versa. If the other person is good on something, you try to blend it together, you get the information flowing so that one can learn within the team. And that way it will be an exponential learning, right? So if there are 5 people in the team, everybody shares information equally. That way everybody will learn and the team will grow as a whole.
You use that term information flowing freely. And
Yeah.
that's really the actualization of finance in and of itself is
Mm-hmm.
information, money, everything flowing freely where it needs to flow.
Exactly.
That information, the flow open from one person to the next, one business unit or the product spearhead down to the tech people, keeping that information flowing freely.
Yep.
So really, how is that created? Because that's the goal. But everyone has different personalities, especially because you mentioned building diverse teams, not only of skill set, but also of thought. And I've heard a lot of those same things, that a lot of breakthroughs in different industries come from different industries. Because
Right.
are in that industry, they might not see the information, they might not be exposed to technology, the people, or what have you. But how can you really create free-flowing information system between your team members so that people will overwork even when they're not asked to? Because is there a greater sign of somebody loving what they do than them choosing to overwork?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so that's one of the key factors. Like what I try to do is somebody might like coding better than testing. So that doesn't mean that he will do all the coding in the team and the other person will all do the testing. So you have to weigh it out and you have to give what the person wants. Like think about why there are so much attrition rate in some of the companies, because either they don't look at the employees, or the employees doesn't have a good boss, right? The manager is not good, or he's not getting what he wants. He might get to learn a new technology which he is not getting, or he or she is not getting, and he doesn't want to stay at that company, right? Or it's the pay. Now, not everything is in my hands, but as a technologist, I think if you can help people, like at least from a technology perspective, who are technologists and they will share the same insight. If you can get to work on a new technology and if you love doing it, then you will stay. So if somebody loves doing something, let them do something. Let them, you know, so the first thing is making it clear what you need to deliver. So if the person is delivering and then doing something on the side, who am I to stop it? Right? I should not stop that as long as the person is delivering. But if he's not delivering and then he's doing some other stuff, then it's a concern. Then he should be brought to focus. So keep the focus on, and at the same time, let people be open, let them go beyond their boundaries, let them do what they like, really, keeping the company focus in line as long as they don't go beyond that mark, and let them flourish. And you will see like magical things happening there.
Right. Letting people flourish. Love that. So when we look at the audience of people who are going to listen to this, thousands of investors and founders, a lot of them in fintech, let's talk about how they can be better when it comes to having banks as customers or selling to banks or working with banks. Because, and I have a curious thought for you, a question. The fintech industry was hit decently hard when it came to fundraising. Numbers have been very low for the last few years. Maybe that's picking up more recently, but I know that, 23 and then 22, I believe, fintech funding from venture capitalists was very low. A lot of the firms got squeezed somewhat, but it's still such a ripe sector of innovation. And in fact, it's essential. It's essential to, building a better industry and serving people to do the things that they do every day. So I'm curious on both fronts there, your view on why there was a potentially squeeze in that industry and what founders and investors can do to be better when it comes to working with banks and innovating.
Yeah, well, great question there. So I think every industry has its highs and lows. Really, you cannot control that. It's on the market, and the market is controlled by a variety of things. It's not only the banking sector. So the banking sector is heavily dependent on the stock market. It's heavily dependent on technology. So you just saw what kind of disruption DeepSeek did. Wiped out 300 million US dollars, more than that, of Nvidia in a single day. I mean, the Nvidia stock fell by 6%, right? So and when Nvidia got hit, the other chip companies got hit, like AMD and everyone. So banking will also get hit. So it's dependent on the other industries. So we don't have control over a lot of things, but what we have control over is how we do our business. So keep the focus. Like what I think is we should have alternative plans so that we don't invest too much on something so that one technology can disrupt the whole thing. We should be investing for a rainy day, like everyone does, right? So you have your highs and lows when you're out of a job. You invest before that so that you can take funds out of it. Like recently, the airline sector got hit during COVID, right? People were not flying, and some of the companies they have already filed for bankruptcy, like Spirit, and then there are other companies which survived. So if you do not plan in advance, you will have to keep funds for a rainy day. So that will be your bank balance, like even for a bank. And then you will have to rank, in my opinion, you will have to rank all the businesses that are going on, like which are the number one, number two, number three, and then do cost cutting based on how the market is looking. So you will have to, not invest. So when everything is flourishing, everything is fine, invest and get businesses and everything. But if everything is not working fine, then you should look at what I can spare with, which are not the necessary ones, which can keep flowing, right? And that is how I think we should decide. And that's what I think most of the companies do, even in the banks. Now, the second part of your question is like what the investors can do better in terms of working with the bank. So I would say like they would need to have a little more faith in terms of like how they're investing, in terms of their portfolio management and everything. It's a booming technology and they will see the benefit of it. Things are coming at a slower pace, might be at this point of time, but once it picks up, it will be for the better. So they will need to keep faith, and that's the word I would say, because unless that's coming from them, I mean, if they do not decide to invest, then who are we to? But then we have other products coming, and maybe like the technology is the disguise which we can use for marketing products from our side. So we can say by the adoption of AI, ML, quantum computing, we can do a lot of risk analytics for them. So everyone loves a good portfolio, and they also would like to have it growing better, right? Nobody wants a portfolio which is going down the line. So to have that, we will have technology like AI, ML, quantum computing behind our back. And once we have it behind our back, then we can harness those and use it to pump it up to the investors, to the customers, to the portfolios, to the risk management. And if we are doing that, I mean, if we do it the right way, then we have their trust. We have their trust in that way. So that is the big thing. Like it doesn't get built in a single day. They need to have a little bit faith. We have a game plan. Everybody has a game plan, but you need to have a game plan. It's not that you're telling we have a game plan and you don't have anything in your mind. So you need to have a game plan. The investors like to see that, and basis on that, that is what they will invest in. They will invest in the game plan going forward down the line.
Mm. And I was particularly speaking about early stage fintech, just to be aware there. So I think banking has done decently well over the last few years, but early stage fintech was the one that had the pinch, and it was
Right.
2022 and 2023, historically low. And then, so you spoke to investors, and I think was a great answer to the question from the investor standpoint in leading banks. Well, what about innovators and founders, people who are starting companies, entrepreneurs who want to innovate and create new technologies and get them into banks and serve a large value in the value chain? Interesting example that comes up in my mind. There was a company recently started by two young guys, probably fresh out of college. I think they were Y Combinator type founders, that they ended up meeting with 100 banking executives and then developed this very specific artificial intelligence technology that does help with improving the underwriting process for loans. And they, I'm sure you could imagine, they built a great product and raised a lot of money. That's the last I know. It was earlier, I think last year. But I think that's a standout example of a way to interact with the world of banking. But talk to some of the founders and some of the entrepreneurs and innovators who have technologies that they think would be great for banks about how they can better collaborate and work with, maybe from an external standpoint, you know, the people in your team to get adoption among the people that really matter in the industry, and that's the large banks.
Right. So I would say like there's a lot of scope in banking that needs to be enhanced every step of the way. We're trying to build products, we're trying to technology, harness and use it like we can. Like you said, underwriting, that's one area. Now we have investment banking, we have portfolio management, we have trading. Now all those are open sectors where research is going on how we can build trade bots, but it's still not yet established. There are some individual companies who have built trade bots, but you will see those are used on an individual scale. That's not used on a corporate level. So none of the major banks have harnessed any trade bot and used it. So what they do is they try to harness the technology themselves, and then they try to mix it up as per the company policy. Now, to the innovators, I would say if there is something early in the game, be proactive instead of building a product and then selling it on the market. If you have particular sectors, so if you can divide it up among 5 sectors that you want to target, right? So let's say healthcare, let's say voting, let's say retail, let's say hospitality. Now, if you think that your product is gonna bring value to each of these sectors, then have a game plan for each of these sectors. Have separate folks particularly aligned to the sectors, align with the banks, and align with somebody in healthcare, like a couple of companies. Because if you develop a product, you will be developing it from your standpoint, and you might not be getting what the banking folks are wanting, what the healthcare folks are wanting, what the retail folks are wanting. Now, if you want to do collaboration, you need to think about what the banks want, what the healthcare people want, what the retail person wants. And that way you can do a proper collaboration. And that way your product will be on a much wider reach rather than, on a stipulated industry.
And would you say that relationships are extremely important? I know that a lot of people, they preclude themselves from getting in the industry or trying this thing, or maybe getting the level of access that's required because they perceive that relationship. I see you're smiling, that finance is very relationship driven, which it is. I mean, we're human beings and relationships are important, but is there an insight there? Because I think one thing I've gathered here, and I was just writing it, is if you're providing value, your product will get adoption. You just got to be able to prove that value and show it, right? If you're providing a ton of value and you keep innovating, it's going to get adoption because you're going to be able to prove out that it's better. But how about getting to that for some of those people? I think are some really good advice here, but how can they navigate some of those other challenges from the relationship standpoint and just getting the level of access that might be required for them to succeed?
Yeah, I think you need to put on your game plan face, and it all depends on how you choose your allies. If you choose 10 banks who are not interested in harnessing that technology, or who are not harnessing any technology at all, and they still want to stick to their old pen and paper computer methodology, then probably it's not going to work. So relation is one of the things. The second thing, the first important thing is you need to pick and choose your targets properly. So do your homework, do your math, and that's like normal on any level. When you're developing software, you will have to understand, you will have to do your homework and then get on the right path. You can be going into 100 banks or 100 healthcare companies, 100 retail companies, and you might not be getting any help from them because they are not interested in your stuff. So you'll have to think about and do your homework. Out of the 100 banks, there will be one, and that is the one that you need. So do your homework. The second thing is in terms of building relations. Yeah, that's definitely important. But if you give the right pitch to the right people, then I think you're going to make it. Like, you'll have to stick with it. You might not get the first time. Like, one of my friend, he was trying to get into Google for a couple of years. I mean, he did not make it in the first try. He did not make it in the second try. He did not make it in the third try. He got it in the fourth try. And that was like 4 consecutive years of trying. And then he finally got into Google and there was no turning back. So if you are innovating, then you will have to have the urge and the appetite to get going, even when you have nothing. And that's what Elon Musk said. I was reading an interesting article by him, and he was telling like when he was in his college days, he used to survive on $2 a day. And that was like his whole day of food. Not the
Apples
rent.
and
Yeah, yeah. Apple and oranges and burgers and the roadside hot dogs.
mm,
And he survived that for a month. And he had the appetite. So if you're an innovator, you cannot have everything. So probably you'll have to keep your mind saying like, I'll get a lot of pushback. I'll not be picked up the first time. If you're getting picked up the first time, then you're really, really lucky. But if you're not, then you should have the appetite to go on. And relationships might not come at the first stage, but it will gradually come on. When you are going into 10 banks, let's say they are not pick and choosing you, but they can say like, hey, I can help you with the 11th bank where I have a relation. They will give you the 11th number. You go there, and if it's your lucky one, then you get picked up, right? So that's how it goes. So you will have to get it going, and you will have to have a positive mindset. That's what matters.
I absolutely love that. It reminds me of some concept I've been thinking about and definitely exists elsewhere, but the inverse list. A lot of people live with this straightforward list, and we look at the things that we do want to do and the things that we don't want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and we just kind of divide our lives and we go, all right, I don't want to do that, and I want to do this. And some of the don't want to do this is things that we actually should do, like putting ourselves out there or exercising or eating right and things like that. And often
Right.
what I've tried to start using on myself is this inverse list. So I love that I'll get a lot of pushback. That's an inverse model rather than being like, I hope I don't get pushback. Just know like
Exactly.
we'll get a lot of pushback.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy, I would say, the inverse list. Like, if you're not going outside of your comfortable seat, and if you're not uncomfortable, then you will not do any innovation, and you will not, progress yourself. So if you are always in your comfortable seat, putting up a comfortable hat, watching the movies, then you will do the same thing all your career, right? So you need to get out of your comfortable zone, and that's where you will see that you are pushing yourself. You will know your limit.
Mhm. And what are the ways that you've pushed yourself out of your comfort zone?
So I mean, I'm a technologist and a banker at heart. So I try to learn as many new technologies that come in the way. And I keep myself updated on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn Learning, it was free. The basic plan is free. You can go over Pluralsight, you can go over Udemy, you can go to 100 of other, online platform where you can learn about AI, even if you're not working on AI, learn about AI, learn about Gen AI, learn about all the new technologies that are coming in. Because if you are at technologies that hurt, then you will know like what is going on, even if you're not working there. 2 years down the line, you might be working there. So get yourself updated every time. So that's how I push myself. And at the same time, I try to get on with all the banking stuff that goes on, like the finance industry, the payment industry, and I try to focus on what innovation I can do, propose it higher up and stuff like that.
Mhm. So then you're viewing your comfort zone as the things that are rote in your mind, right? The things that are you've done a million times. And going out of your comfort zone is then anything that's new that can bring in new insights,
Exactly.
which could
Yeah.
lead to entirely, new courses of action.
Hmm. Hmm.
One thing you mentioned just to close out here earlier, and it could be a decent length topic here, but talk about regulation because I had a guest on last week was at PayPal. I think he said just after the 2000s, so after it was acquired, and he said they were still operating in a gray area for quite a few years, just in the sense of the number of that they should have licenses here, they should have these things here, they should be, complying with these different things, and they weren't.
Hmm.
It's not like they were hiding, right? They're a multi-billion-dollar company, and there have been some other innovations like that too. I think you could technically classify cryptocurrency as one of those where it was actually so new
Hmm.
that there was no such regulation that did exist because it was just, became before there was. And so talk a little bit more about that and what you think, if you're looking at AI, obviously there should be a lot of spend. The only reason I'm saying there should be a lot of spend is because we heard the $500 billion Stargate announcement, and then like 2 days later you get DeepSeek, and everyone's like, "Well,
Yeah.
we don't actually need that much money." But there's a appetite for deregulation in that way, and that also brings up in my mind, and you kind of talked about this earlier, where just because there's less regulation in AI doesn't mean that all of a sudden you need to worry less about regulation. Often you kind of need to worry about how that risk fluctuates because that could potentially lead to more cyber attacks. and kind of that flow. Because I think it would be very enlightening to get your perspective on how regulation influences innovation and the industry, and what your thoughts are now and moving forward on that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. So regulators have their own bodies and they have their own pace of evolving. And we have some of the regulators which are there, like not many. For cards and payments and then normal banking, you have so many. You have the GDPR, you have the PCI DSS, and then the CCPA, all are there. But for cryptocurrencies, I think there are namely like FSB, which is the Financial Stability Board, the Basel Committee, and then for AI, I think there's the EU AI Act. Those frameworks are there. So that doesn't cover everything. And that is definitely a hindrance, I would say. That is what is happening right now. So even if companies are wanting to harness there, like the blockchain or Gen AI, they have to be super cautious. So my opinion would be to be proactive rather than reactive, in the sense, since we are not building those technologies, it's that the technologies are getting built somewhere else. So if you really want to harness the technology, be fast, be proactive. So when they're getting built, you collaborate with those fintechs, you collaborate with those companies early in the game so that you can understand what they are thinking and how they're getting their passes, right? And if you can do that, then you put in your perspective, like that's what we were saying. And that's what we talked about a little bit earlier. So break up the innovation into different parts like healthcare. And this is the time where I'm saying be proactive from the bank side, be proactive from the healthcare side. So if you know that this technology is going to help me out, like JPMC partnered with IBM on the quantum computing, and they are building algorithms. So we are not building algorithms on our side because we don't know much about that space. So we are taking IBM's help and we are in a collaborative manner. So you will have to collaborate with fintechs and other banks early during the technology innovation, in my mind, and test those first. The second point is whatever is there, like, is there anything there? I think there is for the blockchain and AI, the DeFi and the cryptocurrencies. I think there are a couple of them, like FSB, Basel Committee. If you're going into EU, there are a couple of them. So take help of them to understand like what we can be done, because there are some base standards and there are some standards which are missing on top of the base standards. Now, if you're trying to explore those and get those into act, that will take time. So if you can get going with those base standards, try to comply with that, and then you get enough from your side to harness that technology and then apply it slowly, and then let the regulators catch up. So it kind of, at least from the banking side, we have to depend heavily on the compliance, the regulatory part, the audit part, because you don't want to harness something, put money into it, billions of dollars, and then going down the line after 2 years, when you roll out a product, the regulators have already come in and say like, hey, this is not going to work. So then you will be in deep trouble, right? You cannot unwind the funds that have already gone into, and that will be a big loss. So we'll have to go hand in hand, see what is available right now, and based on that, do collaboration, and then take help from that. And based on that, you design your own principles to get going.
Fantastic. Well, I've learned a ton from this podcast, Drew, and I very much appreciate you being here as a guest on Titans of Today. What would be a single thing? And that is, I think there's such a powerful purpose and vision that you've kind of laid out here for the finance industry to remember that we're serving everyday people who are trying to buy groceries, trying to send money to their loved ones, to everything in between, to saving for cars or insurance and retirement. It's really, really wonderful what the finance industry is doing. So what's a powerful message or action that you would have for anybody who's listening to this to take for their lives?
I would say, like, and that's a tough question. I think that's
It
the
is.
toughest question of all.
Yeah.
So a singular message on my side would be like, banks are your allies. We are your allies. And it might be possible that things may not have worked out for you in terms of, getting a loan or, credit or everything, but it's all a part of the system. It's not entirely in our hands, but at the same time, we try to make things better for everybody. And sometimes we excel at our job, sometimes we don't. But that's also, again, not in our hands. But we strive and thrive to make things better. Customer focus is the sole most thing, in my opinion, that I personally do. Even if I'm not dealing with the customers right now on the front side, because I'm not on the marketing side, I'm just a technologist who's sitting at the back office. But in my mind, I always think about when my product hits the market, what they are going to think, right? And if I have something to share to the business, like, tweaking a product to see the interface like this or that, I tell them to do it. So keep faith on us and keep faith in the system. At the same time, if you have concerns, like we have customer service and customer support, the banks do look at them. So if you have any grievances or anything, like go ahead and submit it. And at the same time, I believe it will be heard. But everyone is trying to, every one of the banks is trying to make things better. And as a technologist, as a business, as a product, we all strive to serve the customers and build a reputable name for us. So that will be my message to everyone.
Thank you very much for being on the show. And for everybody who's watching this, probably rewind this and go take more notes, listen to this again, because it's a lot of really clear, actionable information and content, whether you're an executive leader, whether you're a founder, whether you're an innovator, someone trying to get in the industry, someone who's already in it. There's a lot of great information here. So thank you, Dhruv, for being on our show, the Titans Up Today podcast. And we will see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Jacob. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Titans Up Today. What did you learn from it? Make sure to drop a comment below with your most valuable insight so that other people can engage in the conversation around what this speaker brought to the table. And then on another front, make sure to subscribe so that every time we drop a new episode, you will be notified. And that way you can keep fueling your dreams and your brain with fresh insights, which can help you along your journey and along your path to your goals. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next interview.